Good evening. Well, it's evident that we haven't completed our lesson on healing. So let's go right back to the subject of healing. Considering where we stand is holy ground, and sin is because of ignorance and not to be judged, then all land created by God must be holy ground, ready to produce vegetation and so forth. All men are destined to immortality, all heirs with Christ. So if all land is not holy ground, please explain when and why it is not so. A gambler's den might be a good Christian's home the next week. Could it be that all is holy ground, but some just desecrated temporarily by men in error? Now let us understand this. At the very start of our lesson on healing, I said that we would start with absolute truth, which is that God created all that is. Therefore, all that is holy ground. And we went on from there so that you might see, according to the first chapter of Genesis, that this is wholly a spiritual universe, and we are spiritual being, and nothing has ever entered God's kingdom that defileth or maketh a lie. Now, there is another world. This is not one world, as we have been led sometimes to believe. There is a dual universe, and you find this in Paul's explanation that the natural man receiveth not the things of God, is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be. You find it confirmed by the Master. If you do not abide in the Word and let the Word abide in you, you will be as a branch of a tree that is cut off and withers and dies. But on the other hand, if you do abide in the Word and let the Word abide in you, you will bear fruit richly. Now for an explanation. Before my first spiritual experience, I knew nothing of what you might call happiness or success, victory, satisfaction. There was an abundance of money. There was an abundance of the good things of life, but no pleasure, no satisfaction, no peace. There was nothing wrong with the world. The world was all right. But never did I find anything in it to satisfy me or make me happy more than a momentary pleasure of a theater or something of that kind, but no joy, no peace, no satisfaction. Now, after the experience, and ever since then, this world has been some kind of a fairyland to me. There have been problems, but they haven't hurt. There have been some lacks and limitations, but they weren't annoying. There have been 2 illnesses, but Didn't seem to matter a great deal. And on the whole, this world, ever since then, has been just like a paradise to me, just like a fairyland. Now, and as you know, the whole theme of the life is that the place whereon I stand is holy ground. And it has been joyous. Has that reference to the actual physical earth or to my state of consciousness? There is no such thing as a plot of ground that is holy ground. There is only the state of your individual consciousness that makes it heaven or hell. Recently, a couple went through a most horrifying experience with a child. And would you expect them to believe that the place where this happened was holy ground? Or that the individuals concerned were holy or spiritual? Of course not. You must understand this. There is nothing good or bad, but your state of consciousness makes it so. There is nothing in and of itself good or bad. What is meat to one is poison to another. What is pleasure to one is pain to another. There is nothing in and of itself that is holy. It is our state of consciousness that makes it so. In other words, when we have attained a holy state of consciousness, everything in our experience takes on the complexion of holiness. That is the meaning of the experience of the woman who touched Jesus, the hem of Jesus' robe. Now you surely must be aware of the fact that there is no such thing as a holy robe. A robe is made of a piece of cloth, and it can be an expensive piece of cloth or an inexpensive piece of cloth, but it never can be other than a piece of cloth. But when that piece of cloth is in the atmosphere of one who has attained spiritual consciousness, even the cloth bears witness to that holiness. In the same way that a room, now many of you may not know this, but in the Orient, no one would ever occupy a home or a business office or a business place without having someone of a spiritual nature, a minister or so forth, the equal of a minister or priest, come into the home and go into every separate room from the basement to the attic and bless each room. How do you bless each room? It isn't the blessing that you say or the prayer that you utter. It is the state of consciousness of the individual who enters that room, who brings the state of holiness with them. Now you have heard it in all of our classes that this room is not holy. It has in it neither good nor evil. It has in it neither peace nor quiet nor purity. But if you are experiencing that in this room, and you should be, it is because our students have brought their consciousness of peace, confidence, purity, unselfishness into this room. And you have not come into this room, you have come into the consciousness of our students. That is why in all of our work, regardless of where it is held, anywhere from Africa, Australia, New Zealand, on up to England, the continent of Europe, around here, we have groups of students who are naturally selected from the most serious of students, who meditate daily about our work, about the places in which it's held, and usually meet in that room at least an hour beforehand to sit for meditation. And they meditate in the morning before the occasion, so that when you enter an Infinite Way classroom or lecture room, you are not entering a room with a ceiling, a floor, and walls. You are entering the prepared consciousness of our students, those who have prepared their consciousness for you and said, come on in. We welcome you in peace, and we share with you the consciousness of health, of prosperity, of peace, of happiness that we ourselves have received from the presence within. It is for this reason that in all of our meetings, healings take place. I can't remember a meeting when at least one healing hasn't been reported, and I know that there are many that are not reported. It must be so, because you are entering not a room, you are entering a consciousness. Now, if you meditate and make contact with your center, the Spirit of God is released from within you. This is the meaning of Browning's poem. Truth, which means love, life, peace, is within ourselves. We must open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape, rather than expect an entry from outside. Now, when we meditate and touch the center of our being, there is a release. And it is this imprisoned splendor, it is this hidden manna which is released into the atmosphere. And when you come into this room, if you're spiritually receptive, you must feel it. If you are not spiritually receptive and you remain long enough, you will become spiritually receptive and you will feel it. And you will take on the grace, the healing that has been prepared for you by those who have studied and meditated for years before. Now, if you are on the spiritual path and you learn meditation and you arrive at a place where you can release this inner presence, hidden manna, imprisoned splendor, then any place whereon your feet walk is holy ground. And if there were an enemy coming against you, they could not actually reach you. This very spiritual presence would dissolve hatred, would dissolve fear, would dissolve enmity. And it is for this reason that meditation is the final secret of the message of the Infinite Way. The letter of truth which we have in our work is merely a bridge over which we travel until we arrive at this place of meditation where we can go within and release this inner presence. After that, the rest of our Infinite Way lives are just lived in and through meditation. Meditation that's not always visible to you, because we can meditate while being about our business. We can meditate driving a car. We can meditate while buying or selling goods. It's all a matter of development. Now, within anyone who attains the realization of the Spirit of God or the Christ, within anyone, this spiritual presence goes before, walks beside, and you will find that it is literally true that none of the evils can come nigh thy dwelling place. This very presence dissolves whatever it is that would be destructive to your life or to your interest. It would destroy the germs in an epidemic. It would destroy the enmity of your business friends or associates. It would destroy the dislike of some of your relatives. In other words, what you and I could not do, this released spiritual presence does. Now, if you go out into the world of nature, you will find that at the present time, it isn't a very pleasant place. I know that nature lovers have a way of making beautiful poetry about the woods and the forests and the streams, but actually it's all poetic license. Because out there in this world of nature, one animal is living on another animal. Animals are living on birds, and birds are living on insects. One fish is living on another fish. It's just poetic license to talk about all these beauties of nature, when actually the cruelties of nature are beyond your description, or are beyond anyone's descriptive powers. It's a world really of one set of living things preying upon another. And it goes all the way from the ants up to the eagles. Now, this isn't natural. This isn't the way it was meant to be in God's kingdom. And this is not the way it is if you want to change it. Because these animals, birds, vultures, they are only carrying out the consciousness of the human race. It isn't only that we as humans prey upon the animal and fish world. That would not really be as horrible as it sounds when you stop to think that those forms of life are not really the human form of life. But let us remind each other that we are still living in a world of men who are preying upon men. Men who are living off of the flesh of other men and women. Men who are holding others in slavery, holding others in penury, holding others in poverty, holding others in hovels. We have men and women in high places plotting your destruction or my destruction and the destruction of mankind. Not only in war, but in the devastating of the treasuries of the world. They little care what will happen to the people of the world as long as they have the glory of raping the treasuries of the world. Now, let's not call that holy ground. It will become holy ground when you and I, and all those who are turning to the spiritual way, can bring forth this flowing presence which will annihilate the evil in the human mind and bring about the day not only when men can live at peace with men, but you know what will happen when men live at peace with men? The lamb will lie down with the lion. Because these animals and vultures, beasts, they are only reflecting our state of consciousness, the human state of consciousness. And when our human consciousness has been purified so that we live with each other in love, and I don't mean for us this is a simple matter, but when we have so released the Christ upon the world that the Spirit of God enters into government buildings and all the other buildings where the plottings take place, then you will find not only that this ground upon which you stand is holy ground, but it will be so for the human race, the animal, the fish race, and all the rest of them. In other words, then, it isn't the ground that's holy in and of itself. It is the state of consciousness of the individual that makes it holy. And one day, just as people like ourselves can make this room holy ground, or all of you who have shared in this experience of our work these last 2 weeks, certainly you must agree that the whole experience has taken place on holy ground, that wherever any of us and every one of us have been is holy ground, because so much love, so much sharing has gone on between us, so much giving. Well, we can truthfully say then we have been treading on holy ground. And so as we travel, and there are some of you who have traveled in many foreign countries with us, in many cities of the mainland, you know that every experience we have of classwork is like this one. It's really a holy experience, and it's an experience of holy ground. But remember what makes it so. You come together in love. You come together to unite in God. You cannot come to a work of this kind to get something, because there is nothing in our work to get unless it is more and more of God realization. So when you come expecting only God realization, you go away not only with God realization, but with some of the added things of this world. Just see them here. You go with peace, love, and you come back with the fruits of this world. Now, there is the human consciousness, the one in which we were born, which is that of the natural man, the man of earth, the creature. And none of this is under the law of God, and neither indeed can be. None of it is God-governed, and that is why there can be accidents. That is why there can be rape, murder, arson. That's why there can be plottings and plannings. That's why there can be slavery in some places. That is why there can be man's inhumanity to man. The very moment that your consciousness changes, that hate, envy, jealousy, malice leave your consciousness, and don't think you can get rid of them of yourself. Don't ever think that by right thinking you're ever going to get pure. You may repress your human emotions for a little while with right thinking, but believe me, it's going to bounce out all over and in double portion. There's only one way in which consciousness can be purified, and that is by the introduction of Christ or the spiritual presence. When you open your consciousness to the spiritual presence, your whole system is purified. Your soul, your mind, your being, your body, all of you, your purse, everything connected with you becomes purified by the very atmosphere of the Spirit of God that enters you. If so be the Spirit of God dwell in you, then do you become children of God, pure, immortal. So it is that in our work, you see, we have no rules telling anyone how to behave. Because I have a long, long experience in the world, and I know how foolish it is for people to behave because there's a rule. We've been witnessing that ever since the Ten Commandments were written. Oh, certainly, you can get control of people for a while and make them obey the Ten Commandments until they can find a convenient corner to get around. Of course you can. But purification, spiritualization, this can only come through opening our consciousness to a spiritual influence. It's true, the spiritual influence is already within you. That is why it is called a hidden splendor. That is why we call it hidden manna. That is why the Master says, I have meat the world knows not of. I have an inner grace. I have an inner supply that the world knows nothing of. We all have it. Only in the moment of the awakening. Awake, thou that sleepest, and Christ will give thee light. In the moment of awakening, in the moment when you open out this thing here so that what's locked up in you can escape, then it permeates your mind and your body. It purifies the bloodstream as well as purifying the mind. Then you're no longer good. You're just spiritual. And you're no longer evil because there is no capacity for evil in spiritual consciousness. And that is where we get to the teaching of neither good nor evil. You may say that you are good when you're the opposite of bad, when you know that you're just obedient to the Ten Commandments. Then you can say you're good. That's because you still have the capacity to be bad. But once this spirit is released in you, you're neither good nor bad. You're under the influence of that spiritual presence, and then you can understand why the Master says, why callest thou me good? There is but one good. And you will know the meaning of that. You will know then that you aren't good. You're not being obedient. You're not trying to be good. You're just being. And that being that you are is spiritually harmonious and perfect. So it is. The place isn't holy ground, whether it's a gambler's den or whether it's a beautiful spot in the park. Because right in that beautiful spot in the park, this annihilation is going on of one animal over another, one bug over another, one insect over another, one bird over another. It may look to the naked eye to be holy ground, but it isn't. You look out on the beautiful ocean and think this is God's holy ground, look down beneath the surface, and you'll soon have a different idea of it. Or out in these waters, just stick your hand in the water long enough and you'll come to a different conclusion than that it's holy ground. Now, you can make it holy ground because the earth in and of itself is perfect, and everyone and everything in it is perfect. It is only when it is governed by this human sense, which is a belief in two powers, that the imperfection appears. Once the belief in two powers is annihilated from your consciousness, you are no longer good nor evil, you are spiritual. And everything that touches your consciousness begins to take on the complexion of spiritual perfection. Regardless of the seed you are looking at, enjoy its beauty, but don't call it good. When you yourself are capable of a deep meditation that releases the presence of God from within you, then you will find that the place whereon you stand is holy ground, and the lamb will lie down with the lion. I have witnessed it through all of the years of my work, that whenever there are cats or dogs of a chasing nature, after the birds and others, that you can immediately heal them. They respond beautifully. And after you bring them into the realm of your consciousness, they do not go out chasing each other or chasing birds or anything else of that human nature. It is only while they're under the influence of the human that they have the combined ability to be either good or bad. And this is along that same line. If you have been in an accident, do not be double-minded and say this is error, this is God appearing. Ah, yes, but don't accept that to mean that the accident is God appearing. Now here is where you have to make your division in these two worlds. An appearance is never God appearing. An appearance is only the objectification of the human mind. It is what underlies the appearance that is God appearing. In other words, even where there's an accident, underlying this is the God appearing. But the accident itself can never be God appearing, because there are no accidents in God. There are no accidents in God. There are no sins in God. There are no diseases in God. Therefore, you cannot look at a disease and say, this too is God. But through spiritual discernment, you can look right at the disease and say this is God. Because you're not looking at the appearance, you are looking through the appearance. And you are witnessing that which is underlying. Just as I look out here at you, and if I see with my eyes, I only see men and women. I see young and old. I see beautiful and not beautiful. I see good and bad. That's the appearance. But you see, over the years, I have come to discern. And so, even while my eyes are seeing this appearance world, I have an inner eye that sees you. And you can be assured of this, that's the only reason you're here. You are here because you were drawn. You wanted to get to some place where you could be seen as you are. Not as you appear to be, but as you are. That is the nature of every one of us. That's what we're all searching for. Humanly, we say we're hoping to find someone who will understand us. We're all hoping to be understood. We don't really realize that is literally true. That what we're looking for is someone to understand us in our spiritual integrity. Because, you see, each one of us, no matter how villainous we may be on the outside, each one of us knows that inside we are angels. We are so perfect that even our mother doesn't appreciate us. I know that because all my life I've been that way. I haven't found too many people to agree with it, but they didn't know me. They didn't understand me. Inside, I'm a fine fella. And I know that all my life I've longed for someone else to see that in me. And that is why, when you are seeking God, you find yourself in the presence of someone who can see you as you are. And that's when you really feel at peace. You know that you are not being judged for your looks, or for your clothing, or for your jewelry, or for your wealth, or for your reputation, or high position. You know better than that when you're in the presence of those who are on a spiritual path. On this path, everyone is equal, not because they're equal in wealth or health, not because they're equal in social status, because they are equal in this, that they have no human parent. God is the parent of each one of us, and we are all offspring of the same Spirit. Now, it is natural that when you find yourself seeking God, that you end up in the presence of spiritual teaching or spiritual teacher, because that is the only place you're going to find God, is when you find someone sufficiently God-endowed to know you as you are, to see you as you are, to understand you as you are. That is something common to everyone on the face of the globe. Now, if you were to look at an individual, let us say even the healthiest or wealthiest and happiest individual in the world, and say this is God appearing, think how utterly nonsensical that would be if the doctor discovered tomorrow that they have heart disease or cancer or were hit by an automobile. Do you see that? It couldn't be God appearing, could it? Of course not. Even the healthy appearing, the wealthy appearing, the happy appearing is not God appearing. It is just a better human appearance. Just like perhaps 30 or 40 years of age is a better human appearance than 90. But that doesn't make it spiritual. In fact, there's far less spirituality in most of our 30 to 40 than there is in the 90. The 90 is starting to get ready for the kingdom. Now, let us see this clearly, what we mean by the two universes. The universe of appearance, which is never God appearing, no matter how good it looks, and the universe of God appearing, which is the invisible kingdom. Now, the Master reveals these two universes in his statement, "My kingdom is not of this world." This world is always the world of appearances, the world of sense, the world that you can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. This is never God's universe. And if you can see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, or smell it, you are not beholding God's universe. You are beholding this world. And this world can sometimes be a very good one, but it isn't the spiritual one. The spiritual one is the one that you apprehend, comprehend, discern with your inner eye, when you are really seeing the man and woman of God's creating. And that's when you're seeing through them to their soul. This will explain to you then why it is that God knows nothing of sin or disease or death. These never enter the God consciousness. And the proof of this is that it never enters the consciousness of those who are God endowed. Therefore, and of course, we have only occasion to bear witness to those who are God endowed in some measure, since there are so few who are fully God endowed. But remember this, that the only thing that constitutes a spiritual healer, a practitioner, is one who is sufficiently God-endowed so that sin, disease, death, or lack does not enter their consciousness, even if there are 100 appearances of it out here. Only in proportion as, and in some proportion, as they can look at the crippled man and say, what did hinder you? In other words, that crippled estate never entered the master's consciousness. Or look at the woman taken in adultery and say, neither do I condemn thee. None of the appearances enters his consciousness. All he sees, whether it's in the woman taken in adultery or the thief on the cross or the crippled man or the dead ones that he raised, all he sees is the spiritual reality. And the appearances do not register in his consciousness. Now, don't think for a moment that he didn't see them with his eyes. He saw them with his eyes just as we see with our eyes. But he had gotten to the point of spiritual endowment to where he did not react to it because he did not label them evil. He did not label them evil, and therefore the healing could take place. The moment that you can look at this appearance world, and when it looks evil, realize it isn't evil, and when it looks good, realize it isn't good, then you are at the start of a healing career. But not until you can see that conditions in and of themselves are not evil. They only have the evil that the human mind imbues them with. And it isn't your human mind or the sick one's human mind. It is the collective human mind which is being reflected by the individual. Now, in spiritual healing, should one be specific? Now, of course, there is no general rule that you can follow on that, because very often it is not necessary to be specific. Very often it is impossible to be specific because you don't know what's wrong with the individual. In most of the calls for help that you get, it's usually just a call, please help me. In those who are young in the work, they may insist on telling you that it's the right knee or the left shoulder. But as they are in the work a while, they realize the ridiculousness of that. Because it wouldn't make any difference to your practitioner whether it's the right foot or left, or whether it's cancer or consumption, because there's nothing humanly they could do about it, and there's nothing that any spiritual practitioner can do to any condition. And so to say it's my heart or my liver, it may help you to say it's my heart or my liver, but it doesn't help the practitioner, because the practitioner can't possibly know the difference between a heart or a liver or care. Therefore, in that sense, it would not do to be specific in treatment. But you are specific in this way. Or you can be. Even here, it isn't absolutely essential. But it can be that if someone brings to you a claim of a physical nature, it may well be that the start of your treatment or meditation might be some realization of the incorporeal nature of man, and through this realization you'd break down the belief of corporeality. Or, on the other hand, you may have a claim brought to you of a mental nature, maybe either insanity or some mental disturbance. And in this case, your thought might take you to the fact that there cannot be minds many, because mind is an instrument of God. Whatever mind there is, God created. Therefore, there can only be one mind, and that would have to be spiritual in its very nature. So you could be specific in that sense in handling the situation from the standpoint of mind and rather than that of body. Again, you may have problems involving integrity, and you can be very specific there in your realization of the nature of the spiritual nature of God, and therefore the integrity of God's man. And here, in your specific application, you would be realizing that any lack of integrity could not really exist without a law to support it. It can only exist as a universal belief in good and evil, and you could handle that in that manner specifically. Or let us take cases which we so often have now in the industrial world of relationship between management and labor. And here, of course, you might begin your treatment or meditation with the realization of the nature of the claim. The claim is that there are two interests here: the interests of management and the interests of labor. But you see, there again, you're dealing only with appearances, because there are no differences of interest, because there is only one interest. Even humanly, you will realize that anything that would be detrimental to the management would eventually be detrimental to the employee. Certainly anything detrimental to the employee eventually would be detrimental to the employer. So even the employers and employees who are deaf, dumb, and blind to their own interests, as 99% of them are, even they must someday awaken to the fact that there is no such thing as capital's interest or labor's interest. There's only one interest, and that is the success of business, the success of industry. And you can't have a success of an industry at the expense of one part or another. That is gradually dawning in consciousness. But spiritually, this is even more true once you begin to perceive the spiritual nature of man's real nature. Then you know there's only one interest, because there you come back to that part of our spiritual living in the infinite way, which is based upon the scriptural passages, inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Therefore, there is only one interest. What I do for you, that redounds to my credit and benefit. What I do of an injurious nature to you eventually whacks back at me. So therefore, in all our relations, there is only one interest. As you perceive this spiritually, you bring harmony to light. So in this way, then, there are specific truths and specific applications of truth in certain problems. But remember this, that even when you have recourse to the letter of truth in a treatment of this nature that I've described, remember that you are not going to have your healing because of it. This is only the bridge, or this is only the ladder that you climb to reach the state of consciousness that produces the harmony. In other words, the actual work is only done when you achieve a state of meditation in which that hidden splendor is released. It is for this reason that as you go far enough along in the spiritual healing work, that eventually you do not use the ladder of truth. Eventually there is no idea of specific work, because by that time most of the people are aware of the fact that you're not dealing with appearances, and they merely say, give me help. And that may mean that their stock market is crashing, or that they've caught a cold, or a burglar has broken in. In other words, it can be anything at all, and they're shouting, "Give me help." And what is the nature of the help that we can give? As long as I can find my peace, until I am so completely at one with my inner source, that I feel this presence, that's all that's necessary. And then, regardless of what you called for, that's what you got. I didn't know what it was you were calling for, and it made no difference to me. Because the truth is, you were seeking spiritual harmony. And if I attain conscious union with my source, you get spiritual harmony. And if you need it in your pocketbook, it comes that way. If you need it in a business deal, it comes that way. If you need it in physical, mental, moral, financial healing, it comes that way. If you have to pass an examination, it will pass the examination for you. It will come that way. In other words, there is no possible human problem that is not solved by a meditation in which the practitioner achieves the inner peace, the actual realization of the presence. I have experienced it. It's given in some of our classwork in such impossible things as babies about to be born that were turned wrong way too. And then when the doctor called from the delivery room, the baby turned itself around and birthed itself. I've seen it with absolutely impossible situations that a human being couldn't control, and that all the knowledge in the world wouldn't do. But as the moment you attain that inner peace, there it is. Now, again, in the beginning of your healing ministry, you should sit down in an actual meditation with every call that you get. And some of them you should meditate 2 or 3 or 4 times in 24 hours. In other words, until you have really and truly felt that peace that passeth understanding, you are on that case. Now, the further you go, the deeper you go into the healing consciousness, the more you will find yourself living in meditation, so that you will not have to go into it with every call that comes to you, because you're 9/10 in it anyhow. But you will have to go into it 10, 20, or 30 times a day, not for the sake of a call, but always to maintain that inner communion. Then the calls can come thick and fast, and you don't have to go into that meditation. But I warn you, watch your results. If your patients are not getting the results that they should get, it is because you are not meditating often enough or deeply enough. You're not getting deep enough into the Spirit. You're not bringing forth a deep enough realization of God. There's no such thing in this work as just saying, "Oh, let God do it." There is no God on the field until you have brought God on the field by this inner release. Don't forget, there would be no sickness in the world if God were on the field. There would be no sin on earth. There would be no death on earth if God were on the field. And it is only when you bring God to the field by your conscious contact that you wipe out the discords of sense and bring forth divine harmony. Do not forget, the only reason there is an infinite way at all in this world is because of the unfoldment that came to me revealing that there is no God on earth in earthly affairs except as God is brought to it. Moses brought God to the Hebrew people and took them out of slavery. Jesus brought God to the people of his day and brought those who could accept him out into a higher consciousness of life. Wherever there has been a God endowed, man or woman, they have brought the presence of God and the power of God to their followers. But until that man or woman came along, there was an absence of God from that neighborhood. Only remember, it is an absence of God that brings wars on earth. It is not God permitting it. It's that God is not even aware of it. And these things will only be overcome in proportion as there are individuals, 2 or more gathered together, 10 righteous men in a city. As these units of God-realized men and women come together to meditate, to let the Spirit of God loose in the earth, in that proportion do the evils of the world lessen. You all know the experiments we have conducted in different cities in relationship to automobile accidents, and you know the marvelous results that have been attained. Why? Because it is possible to bring the very presence of God to earth. If you will meditate, make contact with your center, and let that release come into the world. This is really the ultimate of this entire message. It isn't what you learn, it isn't the knowledge that you gain, it's the ability to meditate that you attain, the ability to go within until you absolutely contact that spirit within, and then find that life can be lived by grace instead of by law. Now, the subject of meditation is a tough one. Meditation is not easy, not by any standards. And even when you think you've accomplished meditation, you'll find you've only touched the fringe of it. The degree of depth in meditation that you attain will be dependent upon how much effort you want to put into it. And it's just as simple as that. You can decide on a little or a lot, and that's the way it'll be to you. I ask you, those of you who are serious students of the infinite way, do not spend long times at one time in meditation. Keep your meditations to 5, 10, 12 minutes. But have them as many times a day as you can. Those of you who can have them 10 times, have them 10 times, and if any of you can have them 30 times, have them 30. But keep them down to 5, 10, or 12 minutes. Then you will find that the ability to get that contact within will come gradually, and the ability to remain in meditation will come gradually, and eventually you'll discover yourself meditating for an hour while under the belief that it's only 4 or 5 minutes. But don't try to force it, because when meditation becomes a mental practice, it is no longer meditation. When you begin to have thoughts in your meditation, it's not meditation. It is meditation only when you can settle down into peace. And you're lucky if you can hold that for a minute. It may take you 4 or 5 minutes of contemplative meditation before you can settle down to a half minute of absolute meditation, that is, a complete silence, in which your ears are listening, and even your heart is listening, and then comes that gasp, and that's it. And the moment that comes, your meditation's finished. Don't sit there after that wanting to prolong it. You're just wasting the benefit of your meditation. Wait for a half hour or an hour if you want to sit down and meditate again. Once you've had your feeling of release, that's it. Stop. The presence has come forth, and you go out and do your business. But when you're ready, come back for another meditation, and if you like, 10 times a day, 20 times, 30 times a day is not too much, 40 times is not too much. And eventually you'll find that your meditations are lasting 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You're in them and out of them, and the work is done. But oh, the joy of going in and out. Thank you.